beasts and monoliths?
What's the matter, Tiz?
I was thinking about what Ringabel said, about these beasts that have taken the form of monoliths.
You mean the monsters that appeared because Yoko isn't around anymore to control humanity's sins?
We shouldn't mess around. We need to find those monuments and get rid of these sin beasts before they cause real trouble. D'accord, but first we must prepare for the trials ahead. Do you think this is where one of those sin beasts is hiding?
I put my peeg on it.
But it's just a slab of stone. Very large, yes, but unremarkable.
Look out! Something big is happening!
Ah! Look! Something's coming out!
I don't see anything. But wait! There it is!
What is it?
Asmodeus, the manifestation of lust! Look sharp, everyone!
gone. We did it.
We sure did. Huh? What's this feeling? Asmodeus' power! The power of lust is ours! But we must hurry to the next monolith! Check. Hearts of courage? Check. Now, Mesame, let's do this. The monument.
There it is.
Wait. Good grief, is that Beelzebub, the manifestation of gluttony? Look sharp, everyone.
We did it! Somehow.
I've seen monsters in my day, but nothing like that. Beelzebub's power, the power of gluttony, is ours! We've defeated 2 of the 7 great sins, but 5 still remain.
Another sin beast!
Alavash! Mammon, the manifestation of avarice! Look sharp, everyone!
Everyone still in one piece?
More or less.
Mammon's power, the power of avarice, is ours! There were 7 beasts of sin. 4 still remain. The monument!
Another sin beast!
Alavash! Belphegor, the manifestation of sloth! Look sharp, everyone!
everyone still in one piece?
More or less.
Belphegor's power, the power of sloth, is ours! There were 7 beasts of sin. We've come far, but there's still 3 more!
Another Sin Beast!
Alavash! Satan, the manifestation of wrath! Look sharp, everyone!
everyone still in one piece?
More or less.
Satan's power, the power of wrath, is ours! 5 down, 2 to go!
Another sin beast!
A Lavash! Leviathan, the manifestation of envy! Look sharp, everyone!
Everyone's still in one piece?
More or less.
Leviathan's power, the power of envy, is ours! All right, everyone. We're down to our last foe. Look at the monument! Huh?
We all know the routine by now. Care to do the honors, Magnolia? Last but not least...
Lucifer, the manifestation of pride! Look sharp, everyone!
We did it! We really did it! Wait, how many were left?
That was the last one! Huh? What's this? To my ever-loyal Minister of the Right, keep up the hard work. And thanks for all the croissants?
Yoko. Yes, I shall redouble my efforts.
Again with the croissants! Doesn't she care about anything but food?
Look who's talking.
You!
Huh? What are you? How predictable. Come to stop me, have you?
Anna, so you were the one behind the balls.
Sorry, wrong answer. It's my master who creates them. I'm just in charge of transportation.
Your master? But the Kaiser is... Denny is gone.
Did you hear that? He actually thought I meant his stupid brother!
I speak of my true master, Lord Providence, ruler of the celestial realm. He who would deign to descend upon your lowly rock and usher it into a new age of enlightenment. After he kills you all, of course. that's what the balls were for. But then those stupid moon people had to get in the way, so Master sent me to prepare your world for his grand entrance. By blowing the moon out of the sky! But it looks like I don't need to bother with that anymore. After all, I have a shortcut to the celestial realm right here, don't I?
A shortcut to the celestial realm? The Great Chasm is...
You're pretty sharp for a blockhead. Yes, now I can send fully primed balls to all corners of the realm with the greatest of ease. It'll only be a matter of time before Lord Providence himself arrives. You have no idea what a pain this assignment has been. First, I had to find a way to deal with my little sister's ridiculous plans. Then, I had to find someone stupid enough to summon the Holy Pillar for me.
Hold it right there. That's my brother you're talking about.
Who else? He did work hard, I'll give him that. Danced right along to my tune like the good little puppet he was. To deny this miserable world and build a new one in its place. To rewrite the past and forge a new future. This is your duty. No matter what the sacrifice, no matter how terrible the deeds you may do, we must change this world for the better. He ate it all up. It was all I could do not to laugh. Why, he was even ready to kill his own precious little brother for his duty. Never even once realizing he was doing it all for little old me. What a dupe.
That's enough from you! Denny saw through your lies in the end. He chose to save us, to save Luxembourg, and he did so of his own free will! Denny died to save this world. I will not let you make a mockery of his sacrifice!
Ooh, such admirable resolve. But I'm afraid you really don't have much choice in the matter. When Lord Providence descends, Luxembourg as you know it will be completely and utterly destroyed. The precious world your idiot brother died to save will be wiped out in a wink. At last! It's the moment we've been waiting for, Master! In return for your brother's loyal service, allow me to give you a parting gift before your world is destroyed forever. A gift of... me! Like you've never seen me before. secret? My sole duty is to prepare this world for Lord Providence's descent. You could say it was the very reason I was born. But you humans, you're not born for any real purpose at all. That is why you're always lost, why you struggle. You lack purpose, so you're weak. I live, I exist only to serve my master. My duty gives me strength. Strength I will use to destroy you all!
Just what are you fairies anyway?
What are we? Well, what are you humans? Give it up, Tiz. Like you're gonna get a real answer out of her. Why, we are loyal servants, birthed by the will of the gods. I was born first, and Aerie after me. Not that I feel any sisterly love, of course. Why, that Ouroboros creature she served would have destroyed the celestial realm. That's not something I could easily overlook. But you and your friends were kind enough to stop her for me. Here I thought we were on the same side. Yet here you are, standing in my way. Whatever did I do to ruin such a promising friendship? Oh well, it's nothing that can't be solved. By blasting you into itty-bitty pieces. irritating. You've gone and done it, haven't you? Not that it matters anymore. Lord Providence cometh any moment now. All you can do is wait. Wait for the end. Master, aren't you proud of...
Providence, she said?
Altair, you're here. There's something I wanted to ask.
And I think I know what it is. Yes, it is surely as you have suspected. This Providence has control of Vega. I must apologize to you, Magnolia. Diamante, the ball who destroyed your home. It too was doubtless birthed from Vega's memories.
Don't apologize, Altair. I know it isn't your fault, or Vega's. It's the false god Providence that's behind all this suffering. He's the one we need to punish.
Altair, you've been a true friend. You helped us rescue Pope Agnes. If someone you love is being held captive, we're gonna return the favor. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, we're gonna crush a god! I mean, save Vega from Providence.
My children, there is so much good in you. I am proud to have shared this journey together.
This journey ain't over yet, so let's get moving!
Indeed. What is it you always say at times like this? Come you, let us deliver our pièce de radicchio.
Right. Well, let's give it our all, everyone!
Yes. But how? Do we just wait here for this Providence to appear?
No. We will invade the celestial realm ourselves. During my lifetime, I poured my heart and soul into finding a way to the celestial realm, but my research bore no fruit. Imagine my surprise when I came here, to find a closer connection to the celestial realm than anywhere else in this world. But see for yourselves.